Okay, welcome back everyone. Thank you for joining us for part two of our introduction to tarot training today. In this section, in the last section, we went over these 7 myths and I worked with you guys to sort of clarify what exactly the tarot is in the first place. And the overall message that I was giving in the first part of the training was that the tarot is really a tool for empowerment and seeing and mirroring back to yourself the intelligence of your highest self, the intelligence of your soul path. And when you start seeing tarot as this way, all of the false preconceptions that our culture has given us about the tarot sort of fall away, like a suit of armor being shed, and the tarot becomes this very, very wonderful, very personal tool for our own self-discovery and self-growth. And because it is that type of tool, it is such an excellent tool to have with you when you need to make choices and when you would like a little more information or insight or just some confirmation about an intuitive hunch that you might already be having. It's nice for me when I think I'm feeling something with my intuition to grab a deck of cards and pull a card and see if my intuition feels very congruent or not with the card I picked. And I think about that for a while, and that's sort of my own process, and I've been doing that for 20 years. And that's really how the tarot has really built itself into my life day to day. So now in part two, we're actually going to unpack for you what the tarot deck is comprised of. There are 78 cards in a tarot deck, and there are some groups of cards that we're going to go through so that you can understand the different types of cards that are in a tarot deck, how they're divided up, and things like the suits and the numbers of the cards and the symbols on the cards, and even how we correlate one card to another or how we sequence those cards. That is all very important stuff. And once we get a firm grasp on those very sort of basic grouping ideas of the tarot, and we have sort of a basic idea about what each of those groups is about. So, for instance, all of the number twos in a deck of tarot cards are going to have a two-ness about them, right? And so if we understand more about what the number two is, then even if that's all we know about the card we draw, we know something. So it's that very basic knowledge that really gets you started in the tarot rather than waiting until you've got everything memorized. I didn't memorize anything when I started reading. My first tarot teacher when I was 18 just encouraged us to start shuffling and not even worry too much about how we were shuffling and just get going and get something out of our readings, our very first readings. And then she led us through a process as our knowledge of the tarot grew. I was in a 10-week course with her where we studied a few evenings of the week. So it was an immersive experience, and I think every evening that we got together, it was supposed to be about an hour and a half, and it ended up being about 3 or 4 hours. It was a very small group of students meeting in the back room of a local New Age bookstore in San Antonio, Texas, actually. And so we had these sessions that it was just such a treat and a privilege to have been fortunate enough to have come across. And I got a lot of first-hand knowledge. But what really helped, just as much as her sitting there at that table explaining all of the cards to me in greater and greater detail and connecting more and more dots and filling in more and more knowledge about the myth and symbol and archetype of each and every card. I mean, that was definitely 10 weeks well spent. And by the way, my Tarot for Beginners course is set up that exact same way. I so loved the format that my teacher put the first ever introduction to tarot class in for me, that my own Tarot for Beginners class now is definitely a training that is inspired by sort of the lineage of teaching that she came through. And so in that format, we started reading on that table right away. And that's the bit that I'm not going to be able to help you out with so much on your end as you begin to read tarot cards. So I leave this introductory training with that. I'm going to explain the 78 cards. I'm going to show you patterns. I'm going to show you meanings in this training. But then at the end of this training, it is up to you to get your hands on a deck of cards. And even if you don't have a deck of tarot cards handy, by the way, I'll show you in this training how you can repurpose a deck of playing cards to read with while you're waiting on a tarot deck or while you're shopping. So, but I really want you to take this training and go and start reading for yourself, because that is such an important part in developing your own relationship with the tarot. Because when you get to the stage years later, like me, that you have been pulling cards for yourself most days for a couple of decades, you will remember the next time that you draw a card. You will remember the last time that that card came up. And you'll remember about all of the instances before, even if you don't remember consciously. Your body remembers, your spirit remembers, your soul remembers, your unconscious has this filed away. It'll remember each and every time you have ever pulled that card. And so, as I have gone through my practice, what I've found is that when I see images, I feel more and more and more as my response to those images. It's like my response has been built and informed and developed over the 20 years of my gazing at that same image. And so what happens is I can literally, kinesthetically, like in my body, feel a lot of the time how these cards feel. And more then, as you go through life, what I'm finding with that is your body, if it has been trained through a very personal study of the tarot, to respond to cards in certain ways, sort of like the best advice that your own energy body and memory can remember about each of those cards just automatically surfaces in your energy body. A certain vibrational set of frequencies kind of lights up in you, and it's like the more you mirror yourself in this check-in with the tarot cards, the more skillful and developed your tarot reading skills become. But also I can't even begin to tell you how greatly it has impacted my life in a very transformative, very amazing way, to have had this ongoing, developing relationship with my own personal, private practice of reading my own tarot cards. It's been the closest I have come personally to a regular, steady journaling practice, which I know a lot of people really do very well. For me, it's like the journal is always being shuffled. The journal is the deck of cards, and I've got books and books and books of results from readings down. As I've gone through my life more, what I wish I would have done when I first started writing things down in like blank page journals. I'll write the date, I'll write a little bit about the situation that's going on in my life that I'm about to do a reading for, and then I will do the reading and I will write and record the reading down in that journal. And I'll write a bit about my interpretation. And I have those now looking back 10, 15, 20 years of my life. And it's like your own textbook. It's like you're writing your own textbook when you do a practice like this. You are going to have a private tarot practice, and you're going to have a very deeply personal relationship with these cards as you grow to know them more and more. So your journal is your own textbook in a sense. So that's just an idea for you, but that's what you need to do. When you leave this workshop, after we explain these 78 cards for you here, you want to go out and you want to start. You want to begin reading the cards for yourself. Don't delay, just begin. That's the most important thing. Okay? All right, so we're going to go into the 78 cards now. Sorry for the really long intro, guys, but since I'm not going to be able to actually do that next step with you, the actual reading of the cards, I did want to spend a little bit of time just letting you know how important of a piece that is for you to do for yourself. Okay, So the first thing that we need to talk about, actually, let's talk about one thing that I didn't make a slide for because it's a very basic thing, and by the end of this session you'll have the hang of what the very basic division of the tarot deck is. There's one basic division of the tarot deck into two major different sets of cards. Those 78 cards are made up of a set of 22 cards that we're going to talk about in a minute here. And actually, let me just bring those 22 up on the screen. There you go. These are the 22 major arcana card of the tarot. Okay, and the images that you're seeing on the screen in this training are images from a very well-known tarot deck called the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And that deck was originally created in 1910 by Arthur Edward Waite. And it took a lot of the earlier tarot decks. Tarot decks go back hundreds of years, centuries, and can be traced through Europe. And some argue they can be traced and have a history of, a presence in Egypt and Egyptian mythology and Egyptian spiritualism. But certainly we see themes from Greek culture and Greek myth and Greek concepts of the universe. And we see much later concepts from other parts of Europe. We see the first complete tarot deck in the world was, it's an Italian deck. And it was, I think it's been dated to the 1600s. But that's just the first complete deck. We have many other cards with archetypes and depictions on them from earlier than that. And so when we find the Romani, the gypsies, coming through Europe and north into Northern Europe, there's a real history there too that is definitely worth exploring. And that's the history of not only the Romani with these cards, but the mythologies of the people who were already in the northern lands. The oldest tarot card reading, the oldest tarot spread that we know of comes from Ireland, and that we know of, it's about 400 years old. So the tarot is sort of ubiquitous but lost in the mist of time at the same time. It is just that archetypal of a system of knowledge of the human experience and the wisdom of the human experience. We talked a lot about, really what the tarot is in part one, but one of the prevailing senses, if you will, that you really find as you study what you can find. It's sort of like the archaeology of the tarot in a way. Actually, that would be a great course, wouldn't it? The archaeology of the tarot. I'd love to take that course. So the thing is, when you dig, you start uncovering little snippets of card readers and oracle readers and archetypes that were depicted on cards long before our modern day playing cards came to us. And the thing about the deck of cards that is universal is that there are different groups of cards. And even if you find that tarot is wonderful, but later on in your intuitive career where you're using cards as divination, you may branch out from the tarot into Lenormand decks or oracle decks. And the thing about Lenormand decks, oracle decks, playing card decks, and the tarot that they all have in common is that they're all going to have groupings of cards. And one of the very basic groupings in any oracular deck is where are the cards outside of the pips, outside of the suits. And in the tarot, we have 22 of those. There's card 0, which is sort of off by itself on the left there, and that's the Fool. And then there are numbers 1 through 21. So there's 22 altogether. And I talk about why I put them in this layout that you see on this screen a little more later on in Tarot for Beginners. We do a whole immersive workshop studying the relationships and the correlations between the cards when they are laid out in this fashion, just as you see them here on this page. This is called the Tarot Tableau. And laying these 22 major cards out in the tableau really helps us understand the cards in relationships to each other. We start seeing correlations through columns, through rows, through numbers, through cross sums. And we go into all of that more and more in Tarot for Beginners. It's really interesting stuff. But what I want you to see right here is that there are 22 of these, and at first blush, what you can see about all of these cards here is that there are no numbers and suits. For instance, we don't have the 3 of Pentacles or the 2 of Wands or the 4 of Cups. We have the Emperor, Justice, the Wheel of Fortune. We have these titles on these cards, right? And that's how you can find out, even if you don't have a Rider-Waite-Smith deck of tarot cards, even if you have any deck of tarot cards, is going to have these 22 different cards in it. A lot of the newer decks, or the newer interpretations of the deck, or the alternative interpretations of the decks, I've got dozens and dozens of tarot decks, and a lot of them will rename these archetypes, but a lot of the time those numbers that you see at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then row 2 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then row 3 is 15 with the devil all the way through to 21 with the world, right? And those numbers are going to key you in most of the time in whatever deck you're working with as to whatever renaming of the card that particular artist has done, what it correlates to in sort of the blueprint of the tarot. And we use the Rider-Waite-Smith deck in my classes as that sort of blueprint deck that we study the Rider-Waite-Smith, and then we study other cards, and we get a feel for what other interpretations of this archetype are out there. But we start with a basic knowledge of the Rider-Waite-Smith because it is sort of that foundational blueprint deck. And it's a just very easy deck to teach with for that reason too, which is really one of the biggest goals that we have here at Virtual Tarot School, is to make sure that we can teach and train as many people as possible in how to use cards for, doing their own readings. I truly believe that is sort of a universal birthright of all humans. Is we should all sort of have a knowledge of the tarot, because the knowledge of the tarot, just like the knowledge of any spiritual body or spiritual text of wisdom, has to do with our human experience. The 22 major arcana cards, by the way, also correlate in many ways to the chakra system of the energy body that we see described in Vedic sciences and the yogic sciences. The 7 chakras of the body influence and are present and inform these archetypes of the major arcana. We'll show you a bit more about that in further trainings. And then the other thing that is very clearly here is there are 22 of these cards. Just like there are 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And there are so many correlations and tie-ins between Judaic-based and Hebrew-based myth and symbol and the Kabbalah and the Kabbalah's tree of life. There are also, the 22 components fit nicely on the tree of life as well. You can really immerse in a very full way in the study of these 22 major arcana cards. But very simply here in this first training, what does it mean if you have a major arcana card come up in a reading? Well, the major arcana cards of the tarot are sort of the big deals of our lives. These are the big, major life lessons, the big archetypal encounters that we come across, maybe not every day in our day-to-day, chopping wood, carrying water, human existence, but these are the biggies in life. They're the big deal cards. So, for instance, if I'm drawing a 10-card spread, like the Celtic cross spread, one of the first things I'll do when I start to interpret that spread is I'll count up how many of the cards that came up, because there's 10 cards in a Celtic cross spread, 11 if you're using a significator. But the 10 cards, how many of them are majors? How many of them are major arcana? And that will tell me right then and there how, quote unquote, big of a deal this reading is, how much the querent or myself, if I'm reading for myself, has to worry about. And, is this huge stuff, or is this stuff that's going to be okay to handle and I can just stop worrying as the querent? And, the number of major arcana cards is going to tell you something about the importance of the reading and how big of a deal in terms of overall life lessons the theme of this reading is for the querent. The number of major arcana in a reading will very simply tell you that. If you pick a major arcana card, just know that it's kind of a big deal card compared to the other 56 cards in the deck, and we call those other 56 the minor arcana card. And I'm going to go over the minor arcana for you in these two slides. So the minor arcana of the tarot, the 56 cards that are not majors, are going to be called things like the Ace of Cups, or the Ace of Swords, or the Ace of Pentacles, or the Ace of Wands, or the 2, or the 3, or the 4. There are basically 10 numbered cards in each of these 4 suits that we see in the tarot. And then there are 4 court cards as well. So rather than in a deck of playing cards where we have a jack, a queen, and a king, or certain alternate tarot decks will do this too. They'll mix up the court cards to this extent that there are different numbers of courts, but it's very, very rare. Ordinarily, in a 78 card deck of tarot cards, you will have 4 different court cards, and they could have different names, but essentially they are page, knight, queen, and king variants. And then you've got numbers 1 through 10. And you have those 4 court cards and numbers 1 through 10 in 4 different suits. Some people say the 5th suit is the suit of ether, and that's the major arcanas. And the 4 suits of the minor arcana of the tarot are cups, swords, pentacles, and wands. And what you will find, whether your deck of tarot cards actually calls these 4 suits cups, swords, pentacles, and wands, or whether there's a renaming of the suit basically carries an elemental energetic quality to it. And if we can define which of the elements the suit represents, then we can pick out which suit is representing the more traditional named suit very easily, no matter what deck we choose to pick up. So, for instance, the suit of cups works with the elemental energies of water, the water elementals. And what this means is water is all about intuition and emotion and feeling. Water is the element of feeling and emotion. And so you can think of the cup as a vessel which holds the water, right? And so this is the suit of water. In a traditional deck of tarot cards, it is called the suit of cups. It's the suit of emotion. It's the suit of feeling. Some alternate names to this suit that I have in various decks. I have a deck by Rachel Pollack that calls this suit the suit of rivers. I have a more traditional tarot deck that calls it the suit of bowls or the suit of vessels, lots that call them cups and chalices, and a few that go with the elemental name of water for this suit, but it's all the same suit. In your deck of tarot cards, you will find that water element suit represented. And so if you draw a card and you see that it's a cup, or you see that it's whatever water element name and label your deck has given to this suit, if you see that it's a cup, a water sign card, then you know that your answer from the tarot has something to do with emotion and feeling being the most important thing to recognize. Okay? So I'm going to go through the other suits really quickly. By the way, the 2 decks that I have got illustrated aces for the 4 suits displayed on this slide for you are the on the left-hand side we have a couple of images from the Llewellyn Tarot. which is a tarot that illustrates a lot of Welsh myth, and it's a very traditional deck. Most of its images resemble the original Rider-Waite-Smith cards images. So for instance, on the aces here, there's a hand always coming out of a cloud holding the emblem of that suit, and that's very traditional. But it's, a beautiful new painted image by a different artist. And, I love collecting decks to collect all of these beautiful images. But they're all sort of the same, right, in that sense. And then the other deck that I've got on this screen here for you is Linda Ravenscroft's Mystic Fairy Tarot. And I actually gifted this tarot deck to my stepsister, who's a lot younger than me, a few years ago when she came over for a visit. And I find that it's a deck that younger people and people who want sweeter readings without any sort of ominous doom and gloom so much. The Mystic Fairy Tarot is a lovely, cheerful, positive deck to read with. And it's one of my favorites. And then I've got 2 aces here on this page from the Mystic Fairy Tarot as well. And there's a great little companion book to the Mystic Fairy Tarot as well. It's the companion book is written by Barbara Moore, who writes a lot of really excellent companion books for decks, amongst other things that she does. So those are the 2 decks that you see on the screen. But I chose these ones because they have that central emblem of the suit on them, even though they're alternatives to the Rider-Waite-Smith, because these emblems are quite universal. So, as you see, we've got the cups over there on the left, and then there's the swords. Well, the swords, rather than being the element of water, are the element of air. I have a deck that renames this deck as Clouds. I have another one that calls this the suit of air. I have another one that calls this the suit of arrows. And I have another one that calls this the suit of birds. But the common theme there that has helped me decide for each of those decks when I first open them up and go through them what exactly this suit of birds is all about is, oh wait, that's the air sign suit. That's the clouds are the air element, and you look for the one that feels like the air element to you, and you can figure out what your deck's artist is doing a lot of the time. A lot of the time even without consulting the companion book if it's a really good deck. So what the suit of swords, the suit of air, is all about is mental thought. Because so much of the conflict in our world is due to the mind and mental thought and communication, often in older, more traditional decks, you will see images from the suit of swords depicted as conflict-ridden images. The swords are often very difficult looking in a lot of decks. And a lot of the newer decks go, well, hang on, the difficulty and conflict of the swords is just a small part of the swords, and it's really sort of unfair in a way to highlight all this conflict so much. I mean, we all don't strive to have that much conflict in our lives. The reality is there is conflict in our lives, and we have to be realistic and address that. But a lot of the more recent decks have chosen to sort of reinterpret a lot of the original images from that 1910 Rider-Waite-Smith deck and the earlier decks for the swords, and instead of highlighting conflict, they highlight different interpretations of these cards that are all to do with the suit of air, the suit of mental thought, of communication, and of speaking the truth. So this is also the suit of truth. It's also the suit of thought. It's also the suit of mind. All of those are air sign qualities. And so one of my favorite reasons to pick up different tarot decks is actually to see the different takes on the suit of swords, because this is the suit that you'll find a lot of different takes on, because the more traditional swords can be quite negative feeling for a lot of people. I don't mind, I actually, just so you guys know, I mean, I like I just said, I have dozens and dozens of different tarot decks, and it just sort of becomes a collection when you've been reading for a few decades. Obviously, it's just, it's one of my passions, collecting tarot decks. And it probably, will be for a lot of you guys too if you stick with tarot. Sorry, you've got another thing to collect in your life. But tarot decks are just so beautiful. But one of the things that I find I do now that I have a few dozen decks to draw on is when I sit down to do a reading for someone, I will very often give them a choice of decks and figure out which deck feels right for them today. And or for myself, if I'm reading about a certain issue, maybe I sense that I need sort of to slap myself upside the head, so to speak, with like a harsh reality and just really see things the way they are. And if it feels like that for myself, it feels like that sort of reading, I'll very often pick a more traditional deck that has more traditional conflict-y swords, because if I'm reading about something that feels like a conflict to me, it's nice to have a deck that does a good job of interpreting that and putting that in front of me visually very well. But if I'm reading about something that's been very emotionally difficult for me, or I'm reading about something that is already very challenging for me, and I need some support from the reading and I need to feel better after the reading, and that's a focus. I will very often choose one of the alternative decks that I have in my collection that have a softer or more positive interpretation of a lot of the swords. So it's nice to have different decks at your disposal as you sort of get more into your work. Oh, by the way, just in case any of you guys are going through this as best you can with a regular deck of playing cards and you don't have a deck of tarot cards handy, let me also take some time to correlate these to the suits in the regular deck of playing cards. The cups are replaced in our playing card decks with the hearts, and the swords are the same thing as the spades. As air signs. Okay, and then we have the pentacles. The pentacles are the suit of earth. The pentacles are really about all of the 3D, very tactile, material, measurable elements of our life, like our home, our sense of place, where we live. If there's a question of moving locations, that's a question that has a lot to do with the earth sign cards, because a move is a very physical thing. So are your finances and your money. So is your health. These are all the domain of the suit of earth, the suit of pentacles. Some other decks will rename this suit coins, or I have a few decks that are more tribal and they call this stones. I've got a few decks that say this is the suit of stones, or the suit of crystals. I have it renamed as a suit of crystals in one of my decks, and a suit of rainbows in another deck. But just the beautiful physical abundance of the earth is the theme here with this very earth-signed suit. And finally, over on the right-hand side here, you have the fourth suit, which is the suit of wands. Oh, the suit of earth, by the way, in the regular playing card deck would be the equivalent of the diamonds. And then finally, with the wands, we have the tarot's variation of the suit of clubs. The wands are batons in some older decks. In some of my more elementally named decks, this is often the suit of wood or the suit of fire. It represents growth. You will see flowers and butterflies in some of the alternative decks to this, but as the suit of fire and growth, you will often find alchemical animal symbols like salamanders on these cards, and lions and tigers and the felines, and all of these are symbols that you'll see for the suit of fire, the suit of wands. Some of my decks will rename this suit, which is all about creative passion and creativity and pursuing what really, I say now, lights your hair on fire and really gets you excited. That is the suit of creativity. That's the suit of wands. And some of my decks will rename this the suit of fire or the suit of flame. I have one deck that calls it the suit of butterflies. That's the Inner Child Tarot from Isha Lurina. And some that leave it at wands or batons. And really and true, or trees. I have one that calls this trees. But the theme here is growth through creation, through creativity. This is the suit of the creator. This is the suit of the manifester. So these are the four suits for you, and you will find these four suits in each and every deck of tarot cards. You will find cards 1 through 10 in each of these suits, and you will find the 4 court cards usually, the page, the knight, the queen, and the king for each of these suits. Now, when you get away from this reading today and you're like, okay, Laura said I should do a reading next. How do I do a reading? Here's what you already know about 56 cards in the tarot. Okay, just leave the major arcana cards right now, as if you draw a major arcana card when you're going and doing a little reading for yourself, I would recommend starting with just a simple 1 card pull a day as you're a beginner student, familiarizing yourself with the deck of tarot cards. A card a day with a simple journal exercise is going to get you far as a very beginning reading. But when you draw that card, what do you know about that card? Well, either it's a major or it's a minor, right? If it's a major, it's a big life deal sort of thing that you're looking at, and you can look at the image and get more information about that. But if you've drawn a minor arcana card, which is the other 56 cards in the reading, in the deck, what you're really looking at when you have the minors is you're looking at it being one of 4 suits. Every single one of those 58 cards will be in one of these 4 suits. So depending on which suit you pick, you already know a lot about that card and what it has to do with, what is it is representing or meaning for you in your reading. If it's a cup, you are looking at an issue that is dominantly about emotion and feeling. If it is a sword, you are looking at it being dominantly an issue of air, mental communication, perhaps conflict, perhaps thought. And if you're looking at pentacles, you're looking at a very earthy domain reading theme, such as place or health or money or resources. And the suit of wands is going to give you a focus on creativity and passion. So if you can understand and know a bit there about these 4 suits, just like you just now do, you can pull a card from a deck of tarot cards, and you're going to know something about the card you've picked. Either it's a major or a minor, and if it's a minor, it's one of these 4 suits, and you know a little bit about each of these suits right now. That's enough, honestly, to get you going. So what I would highly encourage you to do when you are done with this training is to go and get a deck of cards, shuffle the deck, and allow yourself to kind of to check in internally and ask yourself, your higher self, just a simple question. You know, say something like, higher self, I would like to know a little bit about the general theme for my day today. Maybe you draw this card in the morning over your morning cup of coffee. And, and then you see what you get. And you can write down the card you get. You can write which suit it is or whether it's a major or a minor. And you can kind of correlate that in a journal entry for yourself for a few days. Oh, well, it's a suit of earth issue, so I think this is probably the focus or the theme for my day. And then you can even check in with that little prediction that you've written yourself or your interpretation, and you can see how that actually matches up and what comes to pass in your day and how it might or might not have correlated to the card you read, and just start beginning to make note of things like that. Okay, now really quickly, I'm going to touch on the 4 court cards for you. If you draw a court card rather than, if you draw the 7 of Cups or the 2 of Cups or the Page of Cups, there's obviously a distinction there based on the number or the court card designation, right? So what you can generally see is if you get a number 1 through 4, what you are dealing with is an early sort of developmental stage of something about that suit happening in your life. If you draw a number 5, 5 is the universal number of big change and upheaval. So you've got some sort of upheaval going on in the realm of that suit, or some sort of big change happening in the realm of whatever suit you've picked with a 5. If you've got a number 6 through 10, you've got a more mature, a more developed experience within the realm of that suit. And now what happens if you draw a court card? Well, there's pages, knights, queens, and kings. And we'll go into the actual differences between all of those more in the Tarot for Beginners course, and also in Advanced Tarot 201 we touch on this a lot as well. We have a whole section on the pages, a whole section on the nights, and so on and so forth in those trainings. But just right now, know this. Very basically, if you draw a court card in your reading, the court cards deal with the mastery of the suit. So, in other words, as humans, we are going to master the realm of swords. We're going to master the realm of wands. We're going to master the realm of pentacles. And we're going to master the realm of cups. We are going to master all four of those elements for ourselves in our lives, because those are the four elements that make up our experience on the planets. Those are the elements we are here to master. And when we get a court card, it is an indicator that we have a mastery opportunity in the domain of that suit of some kind. Now, the mastery of the queen is slightly different from the mastery of the king. The mastery of the page looks more like an apprentice. The mastery of the knights is going out into the world and getting something or pursuing something more aggressively. The four court cards have different masteries. They have different things that they do, but they're all to do with mastering that suit. So right here in the introductory training, that's all I really need you to understand about the court cards. Because that way, if you draw a court card for yourself in your 1 card a day exercise that you're going to be doing, you're going to know that that is about mastery of the suit. And you already know a little bit about the suit, so you're well on your way, right? So just know that the court cards are about mastery. We've already talked about the Major Arcana card. Just so you know, we go into much greater detail about the majors in the full Tarot for Beginners course, and we are actually now also developing Advanced Tarot 202, which is a 22-part training just on each of these Major Arcana cards. As with all of the cards in the tarot, there is so much in each of these cards. There is so much symbol. There is so much universal myth that we see pop up as the same sort of myths and archetypes in stories throughout human culture, throughout the world. There is something about the tarot that tells us that these are universal human experiences being meditated on and described and connected to. And in that connection, we connect with our higher self. Our whole brain, if you talk to a neuropsychologist or you talk to anyone who studies English literature, even at a higher degree, they will tell you that the human brain is wired to remember story. We are storytellers. We are an oral people. Before we learn to write, we were talking, we were communicating orally. And so our brain is innately wired to receive and retrieve and recall story much, much easier than little symbols and facts and interpretations and meanings and equations, right? So, in other words, you don't want to memorize what the meaning of the Empress card is, because there is no one meaning. There are a myriad of different reading and meanings and interpretations for any of these cards, and they're really based very much on unique situations that you may be reading about what the cards are around them, and whether they're reversed or upright, what deck you're reading with, what is exactly going on with a querent in front of you versus yourself. So there is no one set meaning. However, there is an archetypal theme for each of these cards. And if we can deeply understand the archetypal theme of each of these cards, and we do that through story and through pattern recognition, which our whole brain is very good at doing, and very good at remembering components of stories. Think about all of the movies, all of the stories that you have seen this year. And if someone said, hey, do you recall that movie? Do you remember who the starring actor in that movie was? You would probably remember who the star of the movie was. You would also remember a lot about the basic plot of the movie, whether it's been 6 months ago that you saw it once or not. That's because your brain is wired to remember story. So in our fuller trainings that we have some special offers on for you here today, we go into this dialoguing when we go into reading, because what we are doing is we are telling story, we are interpreting story, we are talking in story form, and that is the most powerful, most human way to use the deck of tarot cards. So you can see, that a reading, a spread, actually has a lot to do with a storyboard, right? So have you seen people like cartoonists, like the Pixar cartoonists that make, they design things about movies that they're animating, and they have these big storyboards of images and little snippets of text on the walls. They don't have the script on the walls, they have the images, the storyboard there. And a shuffle and a read of a deck of tarot cards through any spread is really like a storyboard for you to look at the entire story that you are, that you're observing and working with in the reading. So that's the most important thing to realize about when you get into doing tarot spreads and interpreting cards for others, is you're just a human telling stories, in a sense. And that isn't to negate the power of this, it is to say that this is an incredibly human skill, and it is incredibly valuable for any human. And the format of the tarot is the format of remembering story. It is a very, very human, very usable format, very useful format for us. Okay, so let me take a minute or two here to just walk you guys through this compendium package offer. I want to give you a little bit of information about each and every course that you see here bundled together, because there's a really good reason why I wanted to put these 6 courses and this 5-month comped membership of the Tarot Mastery Club for you together in a compendium package. I wanted to design a package that really was everything that I would recommend everyone have in their library, as not only a foundation for their tarot practice and their study and their learning of how to read tarot cards and their study of the tarot as an archetype of knowledge in of itself. These 6 courses are really the 6 that I think are the core library. This core library could be a really immersive, adventurous month for you, of learning to read everything upside down and back to front about the tarot that you can find. It's a wealth of information, but just to kind of get a sense of the courses and how far they will take you in here, let's look at the Tarot for Beginners course over here on the top left-hand side of this package offer. It's a 16-hour online course. Even when you have just gotten through Tarot for Beginners, which is about the equivalent of a weekend workshop, or it's about the equivalent of, well, the first time I went through this training, I did a 10-week course where we met for a couple of hours every week with the instructor and then practiced on each other for a couple more hours a week. And that took me through 10 weeks in a very easy fashion. It wasn't a big push to do it all at once. These days when I teach, I find my students are, it's easier for them to block out a weekend and just do the course in more of an immersion style weekend and then have the knowledge of the course. But that Tarot for Beginners course alone here is going to get you to the point, whether you do it as a weekend immersion or over a series of weeks on your own schedule, it will get you to the point where you can pick up and read in a very complete way for yourself, for others, and you will have everything that you need in this course to never have to consult a book if you don't want to. Everything in the Tarot for Beginners course is going to lead you in a sort of fundamental blueprinting way and in more detail through the entire deck, no matter which deck you have chosen. If it's a 78 card deck of tarot cards, you can take this course and read with any 78 card deck of tarot cards. So that Tarot for Beginners course alone, usually, just think about what you would invest in a weekend workshop to learn everything you needed to know about the tarot. When I first did the Tarot for Beginners course myself, that was the only course I took, and the next 10 years of my tarot practice were a personal evolution from that initial course. It really is the best foundation I can give you right there. Now, over 20 years of reading tarot cards, I've learned that some other studies have ultimately complemented my practice in a very exciting way. And that's where Tarot Spreads for Beginners comes in. Technically, Tarot for Beginners is what I am now calling my Tarot 101 class, and Tarot Spreads for Beginners is 102. You could even go through the courses at the same time, but what you'll find when you do this package, when you purchase this package today, is you'll get access to Tarot Spreads for Beginners, and a lot of this course is made up of demonstration spreads and interpretations that I have done for students over the years. Over the years, we've done many series of classes where students will get to learn the basics of the tarot in Tarot for Beginners, and then they get to write in with issues in sort of an email letter to me. And I then take that email letter and I will do a spread, a tarot spread for them, for their question. And I'll take photographs of the spread and I put those spreads up on slides for all of my students, and then I actually go through the literal reading of those spreads, because what I'm finding is the actual practice of reading the tarot cards is something that on our own very rarely do we personally get as much opportunity to read cards as I think a true degree of mastery of the tarot would have us do. Like if we were in a village in medieval England 1,000 years ago and tarot cards were just sort of something that somebody in every town did, well, you'd have sort of an oracle or a psychic or an intuitive as part of that village culture. It was accepted by the culture of the time. The oracles, the psychics, the shamans had their place in those older societies. Today, they don't. Very few of us can get together in a group and read at a high level of tarot spreads in reading with others in our town. Very few of us have that opportunity. We don't know very many other people who can sit around and trade readings with us. But that's sort of the space that our culture has made that this class, Tarot Spreads for Beginners, fills for you, because it's very hands-on, looking over my shoulders style readings of real demonstration tarot spreads. So it's a good companion course for you for the Tarot for Beginners, which is more about the nature of the tarot itself and about the deck of tarot cards and about the meanings of each of those cards in story form. That's Tarot for Beginners. Tarot Spreads for Beginners is a brilliant companion course. In Advanced Tarot 201 and Advanced Tarot 202, which is actually being recorded right now in 22 workshops, these are the courses where we take the minor arcana in 201 and the major arcana in 202, and we unpack each and every single card of the minors and each and every card of the majors in much greater detail. So this is a more involved, in-depth story. You get much more detail on each of the individual cards in these two advanced courses. And then I wanted to also give you the Chakra Intuition System and Tarot for Career and Business. And these are the courses that I have now categorized as my 300 level courses. So they're master's level courses. And the Chakra Intuition System is a system of 60 key readings that I give you, like a spread. 60 different spreads are in this system, and the 60 spreads all have instructional courses and classes in here. So whichever spread you pick to explore, you have a training for that spread in the Chakra Intuition System. Why are there 60? Because these 60 key spreads are spreads that give you more information about vibrational states of being. And how we tie them together is through the chakra system, the 7 chakras of the human energy body that are documented in so many of our ancient traditions of precursors of medicine. For many human cultures have this chakra system documented. So it's a pretty basic introduction to not only intuitive reading, but intuitive reading based on the messages that your own energy body is giving you. Our bodies give us messages and clues to what we should be doing and what we should be avoiding doing in our lives all the time. And the Chakra Intuition System is a system of interpretation for interpreting the messages that our energy body is giving us, and for doing intuitive readings for what is going on in that energy body. So the 60 key vibrational states actually plug in, some of those 60s plug into each of the 7 chakras. So the 7 chakras are in this system, and then they're unpacked in greater detail in specific readings for each of the key vibrational states associated with each of those 7 chakras. So it's a very immersive course. I would recommend taking a month or so to go through the chakra intuition system, whenever you're ready. But I want to give it to you in this package now so you have it. And the same is true for course 302. We have a 303 coming up, by the way, and that's going to be a course on tarot for love and relationship. And right now in this package we have tarot for career and business. And one of the most useful things that I find myself doing as a tarot card reader for myself and for other people is giving them information on where their soul path wants them to go, where the true purpose in their life wants to lead them in terms of a fuller expression of a full, complete feeling career, rather than just doing whatever for money. What this course helps the client do is really master something about what their soul really is egging them on to do in their career and their business. So a greater synthesis of their passions and what they do for money is really one of the ultimate goals of Tarot for Career and Business. And there's a set of spreads and a set of demo readings in that course that will help you do career and business readings for people, just like the chakra intuition system will help you do energy body intuitive readings for people. So this set of 6 courses is really the compendium library of everything I would expect you to have questions about and want to learn more about in the first year or two of your career as a tarot explorer. So I hope you take advantage of this package offer today. It does include over $1,000 worth of trainings here for you, and the whole package for the first 50 here is on instant access for just $147 for everything. So that's over a 95% savings here. I'm also including an exclusive bonus for the first 40 signups this week. If you're one of the first 40, you're also going to get a 5-month comped membership in my private Tarot Mastery Club. This group of students also has access to these 6 courses, but then we meet every week on a private teleseminar where I unpack a more specific theme in tarot for you. These classes are suitable for a beginner and an advanced student, although I do expect all of my Mastery Club members to at least get through the Tarot for Beginners course in their first month of membership with them. I just think that they'll get a much greater value from the 5-month Mastery Club membership if they take the time to go through that Tarot for Beginners course. The Tarot Mastery Club is really that chance to have a private teaching and learning experience with me and the Mastery Club group each and every week. So we'll be doing demo readings and exclusive teleseminars for you, and you'll get all of the access information for that Mastery Club for a full 5 months when you sign up for this package today. So I hope you can take advantage of this package of training. It truly is a compendium of or a library of trainings that we've put together here for you. I really think that it would be a wonderful thing if all of us reconnected to our universal human experiences that connect us all and bind us all through story, through symbol, through universal experience. The tarot is such a connecting medium to work through. You can enhance your intuition through tarot. It can be a powerful self-study, even if you're not sure whether you want to read for other people or not yet. And what I love about this package of trainings is that it's going to really give you the opportunity to get such a complete understanding from a real teacher with the tarot, rather than just from reading books and looking up meanings online. That it's really going to start you off on the right foot, so that if you want to become a complete tarot card deck collector, like me, for instance, you don't need to read and memorize and really study every single book that comes with every single deck that you collect. After you've done even just the Tarot for Beginners training here, you're going to be able to pick up any deck of tarot cards that you like, any deck that you're drawn to at all, and read with it because you understand the universal patterns behind the tarot. And that's where we want to get you to in these trainings, is that independence from having to reference a book. And why that's so important to me is because when we reference a book and we, look up meanings and things, we kind of pull into the analytical brain, because that's the analytical brain's job for us, right? Interpreting and correlating meanings and matching pieces to other pieces. But if we can stay in our whole mind and not pull too much into that left brain stuff, and even go maybe into the creative and right brain, which is, a lot of people will argue the intuitive brain is part of the right brain, and something tells me that the intuition really connects in when we're using our whole brain and the corpus callosum and all of that. And it's really fascinating, by the way, to talk to neuropsychologists about what's happening when people read tarot cards. We've seen a lot of studies on what's happening when people meditate recently, but oh my goodness, I can't wait for the body of knowledge on what happens when people are doing psychic readings. Just really powerful stuff, But the thing about when you consult with a book is it pulls you into that analytical brain, and what we instead try to do in our trainings for you, and this package will do great for you for this, is we're going to give you independence from those books so that you can stay in your whole brain's best function, or your right brain, and connect in a more complete way to your intuition. There's only so much that you can really tap into your intuition while you're doing an analytical brain skill, like trying to recall a memorized meaning. But if we can pull you into the more deep, full meanings of the cards, and by meaning I mean there are stories that you're going to recognize in each of these cards. And, if you have a more complete understanding of a whole story in each of these cards, you don't have to memorize anything. You just naturally remember, because these stories are a part of who you are as a human, with access not only to your own intuition and higher self, but to the collective unconscious that Carl Jung started talking about last century. We've got so much evidence now that the collective unconscious, this unconscious pool of myth that in a way all humans seem to be able to access in some sort of universal sense, that's really the work of the tarot. And when we can unlock that wisdom for you, you will have mastery of the tarot independent of anybody's book. The tarot becomes personal, and it becomes a much more deep experience for you when you do this foundational package of courses. Of course, there's a whole world to explore for years and years if you would like, but this package is really a great start for that. This package is really where you're going to want to start, and it might just be this is the library of trainings that you refer back to for the rest of your tarot career. It can certainly keep you going for a year or two. In fact, when I started learning to read the tarot cards, I took an initial class when I was 18. And I didn't take any more classes until I was in my late 20s, because I was busy just doing my own tarot practice for about a decade there. And the equivalent here would be, my first class was basically the equivalent of what is in Tarot for Beginners on this page. All of the rest is way more foundation and resource than even I had 20 years ago. So I would love you to take advantage of this package. I'd love to see you in further trainings. Thanks so much for joining me for the introductory class, and thank you so much for discovering the magic of the tarot with me.